This is the early edition, a curated weekday guide to major news and developments over the past 24 hours. Curated by Lizzie Jennings and read by an automated voice. Published May 6, 2026 on Just Security, an essential resource for those shaping a just and secure world. Here's today's news. Iran, war, ceasefire. Joint Chiefs Chair Dan Kane said yesterday that the Iranian attacks earlier this week were below the threshold of restarting major combat operations. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth added, "Right now, the ceasefire holds." Nevertheless, some U.S. and Israeli officials believe Trump could give an order to resume the war later this week if there is no substantive progress in negotiations. Barack Ravid reports for Axios. Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday defended the U.S. mission to guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz, dubbed Project Freedom, saying that the Iranian regime cannot be allowed to dictate who uses this vital waterway, which he called a violation of international law. Hegseth said yesterday morning that the U.S. operation in the strait was defensive and temporary. Hegseth also said the U.S.-led operation to reopen the strait was separate and distinct from the wider war with Iran, adding that at some point the United States planned to hand over the mission to the world. Erica L. Green, Eric Schmidt, Greg Jaffe, and Leo Sands report for the New York Times. Paul McCleary and Jack Detch report for Politico. Later on, Tuesday, President Trump announced that the United States was pausing for a short period of time efforts to help guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said the change was based on the request of Pakistan and other countries, as well as great progress toward an agreement. Only 3 commercial ships made it through the strait under Project Freedom. Erica L. Green, Eric Schmidt, Greg Jaffe, and Leo Sands report for the New York Times. Paul McCleary and Jack Detch report for Politico. In comments on a visit to China today, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi made no mention of Trump's latest remarks regarding Project Freedom, but said Tehran was holding out for a fair and comprehensive agreement. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi urged a comprehensive ceasefire during the talks with Araghchi, saying the 2-month conflict has caused major harm and threatens global stability. Reuters reports. Eduardo Castillo reports for AP News. A Pakistani source told Reuters today that the United States and Iran are closing in on a 1-page memo to end the war. "We will close this very soon. We are getting close," the source said. 2 U.S. officials and 2 other sources confirmed this, telling Axios that the White House believes it is close to getting an agreement on a 1-page, 14-point memo to end the war and set a framework for more detailed nuclear negotiations. The United States expects Iranian responses on several key points in the next 48 hours. Reuters reports. Barack Ravid reports. Israel-Hamas war. Israeli strikes yesterday killed at least 3 Palestinians, including a child, and wounded several others in Gaza, health officials said. At least 830 Palestinians have been killed since the ceasefire deal took effect, according to local medics, while Israel says militants have killed 4 of its soldiers over the same period, Reuters reports. The High Representative for Gaza on Trump's Board of Peace, Nikolay Mladenov, yesterday described a positive meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Participants claimed cautious progress and alignment on improving conditions in Gaza. However, Bashar Ababa, an informal mediator between the United States and Hamas, said, "I call people in Gaza and nothing is progressing," adding that no tarps are allowed into Gaza, no tents are allowed, no prefabricated housing is allowed, and no heavy equipment to move rubble is allowed. A rodent infestation in Gaza was so severe that Kogat, the Israeli military body that coordinates aid to Gaza, told Politico it recently allowed in 1,000 rat traps and 90 tons of pesticides at the request of the UN and international organizations. Daniela Cheslow and Giselle Ruhiye-Ewing report. An Israeli court yesterday extended the detention of activists Saif Abu Keshek and Tiago Avila until May 10th, after they were intercepted in international waters near Greece on a Gaza-bound flotilla, citing reasonable suspicion of links to a terrorist group. No formal charges have been filed. Stephen Shear and Elena Rodriguez report for Reuters. Russia-Ukraine war. Russian attacks throughout eastern Ukraine killed at least 27 people yesterday. With mere hours until Ukraine's ceasefire proposal comes into force, Russia shows no signs of preparing to end hostilities. On the contrary, Moscow intensifies terror, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha said on social media. Sergei Chali reports for Reuters. Other global developments. The Tigray People's Liberation Front yesterday restored Tigray's pre-war government structures and appointed Debretsion Gebre-Michael as regional president, creating a rival authority to the existing interim administration in the northern Ethiopian region. The move escalates tensions with Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's federal government and heightens fears of renewed conflict as the EU and the United Kingdom urge de-escalation, Reuters reports. Australia said today that 13 members of Australian families in Syria linked to the Islamic State group are set to travel home, but will receive no government assistance. Australian Federal Police Commissioner Prissy Barrett said some returning Australians could be arrested and charged upon arrival, while others may remain under investigation. Children will undergo community reintegration and support programs. Renju Rose reports for Reuters. U.S. Caribbean and Pacific operations. The U.S. military said yesterday it had struck another boat in the eastern Pacific Ocean, killing 3 people. The strike on the alleged drug smuggling vessel is the second in 2 days and comes as the United States has accelerated the pace of strikes, attacking 7 boats last month. Adam Sella reports for the New York Times. U.S. Foreign Affairs. Rubio yesterday dismissed the possibility that his trip to the Vatican this week is focused on smoothing over relations between the Trump administration and Pope Leo XIV. This trip is really not tied to anything other than the fact that it would be normal for us to engage. Asked about Trump's latest criticism of the Pope for endangering a lot of Catholics and a lot of people with his rhetoric on Iran, Rubio said Trump intended to underscore his belief in the importance of preventing Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Jacob Wendler reports for Politico. The United States is set to remove sanctions against Eritrea, according to an internal U.S. government document seen by Reuters. Analysts have linked the decision to Eritrea's strategic location on the Red Sea shipping route. It is unclear when the lifting of the sanctions will be officially announced. Zambian Foreign Affairs Minister Mulambo Haimbe on Monday accused the United States of making a $2 billion health aid deal conditional on access to its critical minerals and sensitive health data, calling the approach disrespectful and rejecting corruption claims by the outgoing U.S. ambassador. Farai Mutsaka and Gerald Imre report for AP News. U.S. Immigration Developments. Illinois State Police said yesterday that they are investigating the fatal shooting of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez by ICE last summer, after video evidence raised doubts about federal claims that he posed a serious threat. Mitch Smith reports for the New York Times. White House border czar Tom Homan said yesterday that the Trump administration will expand its enforcement operations in New York if the state approves a package of sanctuary-like measures. What's going to happen with places like New York, and if people pass ridiculous legislation not to work with us? We're going to flood the zone, Homan said at a border security expo. New York Governor Kathy Hochul decried Homan's remarks, which she said were at odds with the president's declaration to her in March. Nick Reisman reports for Politico. Tech developments. Apple yesterday agreed to pay $250 million to settle legal claims that it misled consumers about the abilities of its AI system, according to court filings. The settlement resolves a handful of class action lawsuits filed against Apple last year, which claimed the company oversold what its product could do during its rollout in 2024. David McCabe and Callie Huang report for the New York Times. Pennsylvania has filed a lawsuit against the maker of Character.ai, alleging that it violated state law by presenting an AI chatbot character as a licensed doctor. John Brodkin reports for Ars Technica. U.S. domestic developments. 5 Trump-backed primary challengers defeated Indiana Republican state senators who had opposed a mid-decade redistricting push, while one incumbent won and one race was still too close to call last night. Caroline Vakil reports for The Hill. Jonathan J. Cooper, Humaira Lodi, and Simran Parwani report for AP News. A Louisiana legislative committee that oversees redistricting will meet Friday to hear public comments on a new congressional district map after the Supreme Court's decision last week to overturn the existing version. Piper Hutchinson reports for the Louisiana Illuminator. Senate Judiciary Republicans unveiled a proposal late Monday night as part of a roughly $72 billion reconciliation package to fund immigration enforcement, including ICE and Border Patrol, which includes about $1 billion for Secret Service security upgrades tied to Trump's ballroom project. The funding would come on top of nearly $3.3 billion the Secret Service already received under the fiscal 2026 DHS funding bill signed into law last week. A federal judge said yesterday that she was referring a Trump administration lawyer for possible discipline after he failed to disclose key information about an immigrant's overseas murder warrant, which the judge said undermined candor to the court. Mattathias Schwartz reports for the New York Times. Trump administration actions. The Food and Drug Administration stopped publication of studies about the safety of vaccines to protect against COVID-19 and shingles in recent months. A spokesperson for the Health and Human Services Department said. In a statement, the HHS spokesperson said the studies were withdrawn because the authors drew broad conclusions that were not supported by the underlying data. Lena H. Sun and Rachel Rubain report for The Washington Post. The Center for AI Standards and Innovation at the Department of Commerce's National Institute of Standards and Technology yesterday announced new agreements with Google DeepMind, Microsoft, and xAI. According to a press release, Casey will test advanced AI models before and after release, focusing on safety and national security risks. Collie Hayes reports for BBC News. The State Department yesterday officially terminated the employment of approximately 200 Foreign Service members as part of a reduction in force. The termination notices delivered yesterday were delayed for 6 months due to the government shutdown in November, lawsuits challenging the RIFs, and efforts by lawmakers to block the layoffs. Staff received their salaries during this time and were classified as being on administrative leave. Trump administration litigation. The Trump administration's Equal Employment Opportunity Commission filed a lawsuit yesterday against the New York Times, alleging that the Times passed over a qualified white male employee because he would not help the company meet its goal of boosting the newsroom's ranks of underrepresented groups. A necessary consequence of NYT's intent to increase the percentage of non-white leaders would be a decrease in the percentage of white leaders, the government's lawsuit alleged. Nick Needs-Wideck reports for Politico. A federal appeals court yesterday split over the Trump administration's policy of mandatory detention for most people facing deportation, with judges disagreeing on whether the 1996 immigration law authorizes holding detainees without bond. The divided ruling deepens an existing split among courts nationwide and increases the likelihood that the Supreme Court will ultimately decide the issue. Kyle Cheney reports for Politico. Thank you for listening to Just Security's early edition today, 6/2026. If you enjoy listening, Just Security's analytic articles are also available in audio form on the justsecurity.org website. To stay up to date on Just Security's analysis of law, policy, and current events, go to justsecurity.org, subscribe to Just Security on Substack, and follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads.